Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're talking about the 2026 U.S. Senate primary that just took place in the state of Minnesota and breaking down these results all for you in this video today. So, okay, first things first, we gotta get out of the way. Peggy Flanagan, the lieutenant governor, did officially win, defeating Democrat Congresswoman Angie Craig in this primary. Flanagan was talked about as the more progressive candidate in this race. Angie Craig was looked as the more moderate establishment type of Democrat candidate. In terms of the overall votes and how they came in, Flanagan ends up getting about 59% of the vote, 58.99, to Angie Craig's 39.38% of the vote. There were also a handful of other candidates in the race. Each one got about half a percentage point or less, aside from Kurt Anderson, who got 0.66%. So when you look at it, it's pretty close to like a 96-97% of the vote, split between Flanagan and Craig, and the rest of the candidates made up the remainder 3% or so. This wasn't a massive surprise that Peggy Flanagan came out on top. The margins in which she did, though, is actually a little bit of a surprise. We can see here on the polling. Go back to the Senate elections here. The polling heading into this race in the final few days actually showed a pretty competitive race between Angie Craig and Peggy Flanagan, including the final poll from the KTSP Survey USA poll, showing that Angie Craig was at 42%. Flanagan was at 40% of the vote, with still 15% of the vote undecided. Now, this is one, even though I had a pretty rough night on my final predictions in the Minnesota governor primary for the Republicans and the Wisconsin governor primary, this one I was pretty spot on about between Peggy Flanagan and Angie Craig. I do believe I had it as a likely Democratic win for Peggy Flanagan when everything was said and done, but Flanagan did end up winning this by about 20 points or so, so a little bit more in terms of the margins, but Flanagan does end up winning. You can see here on the decision desk map, the green color is Flanagan, the pink is Angie Craig. The large reason that we saw a big win for Peggy Flanagan was her performance in the Hennepin County and the surrounding areas around Minneapolis and St. Paul. We'll zoom in and take a look here in these very key counties. Hennepin County, which has the most voters of any county in the state, about 851,513 overall voters here. In this primary, Democrats had actually a pretty good turnout, getting nearly 700,000 votes in this race. Hennepin County comes in 241,000 votes or so. Flanagan gets 153,036 votes. Angie Craig gets 85,173. And you can look at some of their surrounding counties as well, like Ramsey County, where I think St. Paul may be. Ramsey County comes in 64.2%, nearly 59,000 votes or so for Flanagan. Craig getting about 32,000 votes in that. So about 20,000 and about 28,000 or so net gain out of Ramsey for Flanagan, and then you also have a very large amount, about 70,000 or so out of Hennepin County as well. Flanagan did very, very well here in the surrounding counties as well, outside here in this part, like Sibley County and Scott County, Carver County. This is actually part of the district that Angie Craig does currently represent. In the second district, which she won in 2022 by 5 points, won in 2024 by about 13.5. She was going to need very strong showings in these areas to win this primary against Flanagan, but Flanagan, even in some of these areas that she lost to Angie Craig, wasn't by a very massive amount. Scott County was only about a 2% difference for Craig, and Rice County as well. Craig only won it by about, look at this, 26 votes here. Dakota County, very large amount of voters as well, but 61,000 votes, 308 total thousand registered voters here. It came in for Angie Craig over Peggy Flanagan only by about 60 votes or so in this district, separating Craig and Flanagan. So Flanagan, honestly, when you look across the state and how it came in, it was just a very good night for her. She had a very strong showing in the Minneapolis area, whereas there's most of the vote of the state. You're looking at either not a majority or a plurality of the vote. A lot of it is going to come from the Minneapolis area, so Flanagan did very well there. But when you also look across the rest of the state as well, similar as we looked at the Republican primary, a lot of these smaller rural areas and even some suburban areas as well. There's also a few large ones like St. Louis County as well up in the northern part of Minnesota. They also came in for Peggy Flanagan pretty well as well. Angie Craig did well in the central part of the state and the western part of the state and these smaller areas and these more rural areas. But Peggy Flanagan had a good mix of Minneapolis and also some of these more smaller rural areas throughout the state as well. So in terms of how this ended up playing out, It's been an interesting few weeks as a lot of progressive Democratic candidates like Abdul Sayed in Michigan, he narrowly won his primary after looking like he was going to win in a blowout. In Wisconsin, Francesca Hong looked like for sure she was going to win her primary in a blowout, ends up losing it by about a point. Peggy Flanagan, polls showed a very close race versus Angie Craig in the final few days with a lot of undecided vote, but in a win for progressives, Flanagan ends up winning by a pretty decisive blowout in this primary, about 20% of the vote. So that was very significant in this. Now we can move towards the general election and talk about this race. It's going to be an interesting race as well because Minnesota, it's a state that votes for the Democrats, but the margins of victory vary a bit. President, it voted for Donald Trump, or for Kamala Harris over Donald Trump, by 4.2% in 2024 after voted for Joe Biden by 7 points in 2020. 2016 only voted for Clinton over Trump by about 1.5%. Obviously, a lot of third-party vote here played a very important role, but still very close race on the presidential side. The Senate side, Amy Klobuchar won by 15 points in 2024, but in 2020 on the same ballot, Tina Smith, I'm sorry, not on the same ballot, that was 2018. Tina Smith won her Senate race by 5.2% against the Republican Lewis. Though again, third-party vote could be an important factor. A third-party candidate, O'Connor, got about 5.92% of the vote. So have to see how that would have gone in that scenario. But in 2018, Klobuchar won her Senate race in the first Trump midterm by 24 points. Tina Smith won hers about 10.6%. So in terms of what this race is going to look at, we're probably looking at a decently competitive race in the general election, but one that's probably under 15 points, but the Democrats are probably favored in. We can look here at a few different sources here. We can go to Race to the White House and look at their 2026 Senate forecast for this race here, pull it up, in the state of Minnesota, and that's about 13.7%. I can get the actual state result up here. You can look. Minnesota, currently in terms of the chances of winning, Flanagan is at 97% or so. Republican Michele Tafoya, who won her primary on Tuesday, is at about 3%. In terms of their overall projected lead, it's currently a Democrat plus 13.7 for the race to the White House polling average. The way they came to this number, the national environment factor gives the Democrat an advantage of about 4.3%. The state partisan lead gives another 3.5. In terms of experience winning, they also give the edge to the lieutenant governor by 3.4%. Fundraising's up Democrat 1.4, head-to-head polling Democrat 1.1, and approval polls roughly about even 0.0. In terms of the odds changes to win here, it's been a pretty decisive win for Peggy Flanagan the whole time. She never really fell below 80% of the vote and their chances to win here. The projected lead as well has been a pretty decently sized margin. It was right around 10 points in between like March and the beginning of January of last year, 2025. Since then, it's been hovering right around 12 to 13 points. It has reached a high of 15 in the last month or so, but now it's back down to about 13 points on the race to the White House polling average. On Vote Hub as well, they currently have it listed at about a 12.3% margin of victory for the Democrat, where this is what the map looks like for a county-by-county basis. In terms of the overall probability, they have a 97% chance of the Democrat winning. Their margin, as I mentioned, though, that, 56.1 to 43.8 or so, just shy of about a 13-point win here for the Democrats. No real differences here in the rankings between Vote Hub and Race to the White House on the markets for Flanagan and Michele Tafoya. On the Kalshi side of things, about 91% chance for Flanagan, 8% chance for Michele Tafoya. There's no real doubt here on how this race is going to go. I will say Michele Tafoya, even though she is a first-time candidate, is probably a stronger Republican candidate than Royce White, who ran against Amy Klobuchar in 2024, and Tafoya had a defeat in the primary. She'll definitely, I think, do a better job of getting independent voters and even some Democratic voters as well than Royce White did. But this election environment is just going to be very tough for a Republican to win in Minnesota. Peggy Flanagan's going to have that advantage as well. She'll also have the advantage of being on the ballot of Amy Klobuchar, who, if you know Minnesota elections, you'll know Amy Klobuchar is a massive Democratic overperformer in the state of Minnesota in these elections. The Democrats should be in for a very good night in the state of Minnesota. And honestly, right around like a 10 to a 15-point victory. It's a wide range, but in that likely margin is definitely, I think, where the state is tracking right now. And it plays into a very important Senate election for 2026. I think I have the Senate map pulled up here, where we can just really quickly, I'm just going to fill in some of these states across the country that we know are safe, and then we can go back and do some of the ones that aren't safe as well and have a little bit more of a conversation. Kansas actually probably leave off for now, but we can go through a lot of these places and just talk about them very, very quickly and talk about kind of setting this up for what this could look like in the general election here. So I'm just going to do that. Minnesota put in as likely Democrat. For now, we can throw in probably New Hampshire and Georgia as likely Democrat for now as well. And start talking about some of these key important races here. Nebraska is probably lean R right now. Iowa's lean R, probably lean R. Michigan, I'd put it as lean D right now. Maine, I'd still put it as like lean D to tilt D right now. North Carolina for Roy Cooper for now, I'd still say it lean D. That could be likely D very quickly. Ohio, Texas, Alaska, all definitely super, super close as well. Push comes to shove for today. I'd honestly probably go tilt Republican in all of them, but that's definitely like hanging on by a thread here. Minnesota as a likely Democratic state, it factors into the Senate map a little bit. There's no real possibility of the Republicans winning it here, but if the margins for some reason got a lot more competitive and the Democrats had to spend a ton of money to hold it, maybe that could put the Republicans in an opportunity a little bit more to shore up a state like Michigan or Maine or hold in Ohio, Iowa, Texas, Alaska. But Minnesota, I don't think is going to be too much of a shock here in this election environment for 2026. The Democrats should hold Minnesota very strongly, and that opens up the possibility for states or Senate seats in states across the map. But for the primary night, Peggy Flanagan defeats Angie Craig. It'll be interesting to hear because we always talk about these primaries, about the winning candidate going on to the general election. Angie Craig's going to be interesting because Amy Klobuchar, if she wins the governor's race, which again I expect that she will have to appoint, or the governor will have to appoint a new senator for her Senate seat when she takes office. There will be a vacancy. I would say there's a pretty strong chance Angie Craig may get appointed to that seat as well, as Amy Klobuchar certainly I would argue is more of a establishment moderate senator from Minnesota than a like socialist type senator. So maybe Angie Craig gets the appointment from Klobuchar. We'll see how that all plays out. But for this Democratic primary, Peggy Flanagan officially wins, defeating Angie Craig. Now the general election against Michele Tafoya is officially on. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you did, and hope to see you in a future video. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, I really appreciate it if you could hit like and hit subscribe as well. It would really help me and my channel out a whole lot if you could do that for me. You can see in the circle in the top left the subscribe here button to subscribe to the channel. On the right, there are going to be two video pop-ups for you. My latest video will be on the top, and a recommended playlist by myself will be on the bottom as well. In the bottom left of the screen, you'll see my channel name, Anthony's Election Center, which you are currently watching. On my Facebook, Anthony.ElectionCenter is also there. And if you want to reach out to me on email, anthpredicts@gmail.com is my email. Feel free to pause the video if you need to. If you want to look for any of these, obviously in more time, please feel free. But for now, though, that is it. I really thank you all for watching and hope to see you in a future video.